Hello and thank you for your interest in our 7 things you must know before hiring a remodeling contractor audio CD. I'm so glad you decided to get your hands on this information because on this CD, Nate Baum with Nate's Custom Renovations is going to share with you proven advice and tips that all homeowners should know before hiring a remodeler. Obviously, this audio CD is a one-way conversation. So, if you have a question or a comment, please write it down. And at the end of this recording, Nate will be giving you the opportunity to get any questions you have answered. Now, with no further ado, let's get started.
Okay, before we get into today's tips and content, I'd like everyone to hear a little bit about Nate Baum, Nate's Custom Renovations. So Nate, can you kind of start us off by sharing with everyone just a little bit about who you are and what the business is all about?
Thank you, Kyle. It's good to be here with you today. I started our company for the same reason that many businesses begin, and that's to address a real and important need in the marketplace. And in our case, it was a complete lack of good old-fashioned customer service on the part of the remodeling industry. Unfortunately, our industry has gained a very poor reputation in the public's eyes, to the point that a good many homeowners would rather take on their own projects themselves, or they just start their search with very low expectations and oftentimes are not disappointed in that manner. I'm sure most of our listeners have heard or have had some rotten experiences with contractors, and I hear these stories myself all the time from talking to people about contractors who just in the initial stages alone will not call them back, or they're slow or late to show up, or they don't even show up at all.
No doubt there's a lot of frustration there.
Yeah, and so that's what we're all about. You know, we're there to show homeowners, our clients, that we're different in that respect. And we're not going to let them down. We're gonna communicate, solid communication throughout the whole process, and be there when they need us.
Give them a wonderful remodeling experience.
Exactly.
Cool. All right, so that's the business side. Tell us just a little bit before we get into the content. Also, what about the personal side? We don't need to get too personal, but tell us just a little bit about yourself outside the office.
Sure. I was born and raised here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I met my beautiful wife, Susan, about 15 years ago, and then shortly thereafter we got married and started a family. So we've got 3 great kids aged 13 to 5, and at this point, anytime I'm not working on the business, I'm running kids from one activity to the next, almost a second full-time job.
So you got any of these kids that are going to be taking over Nate's Custom Renovations in future years?
You know, my little boy's 5 now, and he's already started to show some interest. So I think we've got some promise there.
There you go. There you go. All right, great. Well, you know, the point of this interview, this audio is, you know, what we feel and what you've kind of explained already is that, you know, one of the most important keys to having a successful remodeling project is really who you select to do the project. You know, that's something that, you know, some homeowners just kind of speed through that process, and it's really the most important thing to slow down and to consider, who am I going to select? So let's kind of get into that a little bit and talk to us. Let's start out with kind of how to avoid the most common misconceptions about home remodeling. Let's start out with this one. Going with a low price saves you money. You know, talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, so slow down and think about this for a minute. You solicited several bids and end up going with the contractor that has the lowest price. So you've just awarded your job to the guy that just figured out the cheapest way to get your project done. Is this really what you want? You know, they're going to use the cheapest materials, the cheapest labor. They're going to cut corners wherever they can find a corner that could be cut. And a vast majority of the horror stories that you hear about on the, you know, the news TV shows like Dateline in 2020, such things, are nightmare experiences with contractors that stem from people going with the lowest price contractor typically. So, like the age-old saying goes, you get what you pay for in most cases.
There you go. There you go. Very good. All right, so let's talk about this other misconception. The term fully insured must mean that the contractor carries all of the necessary insurance to provide me with adequate protection. This is one that homeowners, I think, a lot of times are a little confused about. Talk to us about this misconception.
So surprisingly, this is not always the case. Contractors are required to carry a minimum of 2 insurances. Workers' compensation insurance if he hires 1 or more employees, and contractor's liability insurance. The workers' compensation covers you if a person that's working for on your property is injured, and the liability insurance covers the property damage that may be a result of the work that's going on in your house. Both types of these insurance are very expensive and have become more so in recent years. But of the 2, workers' compensation insurance is considerably more expensive, and sometimes up to 4 or 5 times as much as liability insurance. So many contractors will illegally avoid paying for the more expensive workers' compensation insurance by claiming that they don't actually need it due to the fact that they technically don't have any employees, by using what they'll call subcontractors that are supposedly independent contractors, but are actually working for the general contractor. And in that case, you are liable if something happens and they don't have workers' compensation insurance, and something happens to that person on your property. That would ultimately come back to
So number 1, it's illegal, and number 2, like all insurance, it only hits you when something goes wrong, but when it does, you're liable. That's the key part of that.
Sure. And so the biggest thing is to make sure that you ask for proof of insurance. You can easily, if a contractor's legit, they will have no problem at all giving you copies of their insurance certificate.
Good.
For both liability and workers' compensation.
Good. And how about this other misconception? And I know you're going to answer this not out of selfish reasons, but for the reasons that this sometimes is the best route to go for homeowners. You should always get 3 bids. Talk about that misconception.
Well, this is not necessarily true, and it's probably responsible for more dissatisfaction within the remodeling industry than any other single factor. And why is that? If your objective is to get a quality job at a fair price, simply comparing it to another estimate is often very misleading. And there aren't any standard prices or standard specifications in remodeling. Each quote or estimate that you're going to receive is a reflection of what's included in the job that the particular contractor is planning on completing for you. And given that you're buying something that doesn't even exist yet, it's impossible to tell how similar one contractor's proposed job is from the next. Even if you think it's similar enough, it rarely is, and you won't discover this until you get the job underway, or worse yet, if it's nearly completely finished. And this is after you've invested some or all of your money, which is more than likely thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing to do, and what we always tell people to do, is research your contractor. Find the one that you are the most comfortable with and that you found has the best reputation. And if you're concerned about getting a good deal, of course, and of course we all are, consider relying on a contractor that's got an excellent reputation. And it's very rare to find a contractor that's earned an outstanding reputation of quality and service that charges too much for the work that they provide.
Because they wouldn't be working then, right?
No, if they didn't do the exceptional work or charge too much, they wouldn't have that good reputation or a substantial list of satisfied clients.
Good.
They just simply could not fool such a large number of people into believing they were good if they weren't indeed good at what they do.
Excellent. Valuable tips. Excellent. Let's kind of segue into another section we want to talk about, which is what to watch out for. If there is an industry that has all those stories, you got the Homes on Homes, right? Mike Holmes fixing all that shabby and those con artists and all those scam remodelers. You see it on the local news, you see it on the national news. Our industry has a lot of black eyes on it. So talk to us a little bit about what should people be watching out for. Tell us a little bit about those.
Well, the first one I would say is the high pressure sales tactics, and everybody's got that vision in their mind, I suppose, when you say high pressure sales. The vacuum salesman or the guy that comes to your door and tries to sell you a box full of knives, whatever. But in the remodeling business, it's becoming more and more competitive, and so a lot of contractors are resorting to these high pressure tactics to get you to sign on the spot. And they generally will have their own private agenda. They're not interested in the eventual outcome of your project as much as they are making that sale and getting the check, as soon as possible. So you should never feel pressured into making a decision, especially a decision that's so big and affects your home, where you live. So if you ever feel pressured by a contractor, just politely ask them to back off, and if they persist, it's time to look for another contractor.
Talk to me about another warning sign. What to watch out for, the old price reduction.
Well, this one kind of goes in hand in hand with the high pressure. It's the price reduction. And so that's just basically when they've got the pressure on and you are resisting, you're saying no, and show a bit of reluctance to the initial offer, then they'll respond with a lower price. And this always throws up a big red flag in my mind, and it should in most people's, because if this is truly your best price, then why didn't you offer me that price to begin with? So they were just trying to get more money out of you to begin with. So in my opinion, that shows dishonesty right from the get-go.
No doubt. Two more that kind of tie in together, but first one being no contract or proposal, and the second being incomplete specifications or unclear terms. So often when we hear about the horror stories, well, they said this was going to be included, or I thought that we agreed to do this, and now they're telling us it's a change order, and it's going to cost more and more and more. Talk to us about those and how homeowners can avoid that.
Most of those problems, are just a poor communication and things that, specifications that are not in writing, So you want to make sure that you've always got a contract with your contractor. Should make sense, right?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many headaches and frustrations could be avoided if people would just make sure that they are getting everything in writing, including in the proposal. There should be detailed specifications of exactly what you're going to get when you sign this contract, so that you don't get to the end of the job and say, we thought you were going to do this, and and they say, no, we didn't plan on doing that. So as long as everything's written down and clearly defined, I don't think we don't usually have any problems with specifications.
So we talked about common misconceptions about the home remodeling world. What to watch out for. Lots of good tips. Lots of very practical tips. Again, homeowners just need to, and everybody listening to this, when you're going through that selection process, you need to slow down. You need to ask questions. You need to ask for insurance. You need to do a good job of really interviewing your contractor.
And their past clients, of course, ask for referrals and ask to get some numbers so you can call some of their past clients.
Some references,
and ask them some some questions about their experience.
Again, takes a little bit of time, but this is your most, important asset you have, probably your most expensive asset you have. And a lot of
Right.
people have saved up for years to get that new kitchen done. And it's worth taking the time and going through that process. Let's talk about one other area that homeowners should be aware of. And what we have here is the top 6 methods remodelers use to offer homeowners lower prices.
Sure.
Walk us through those 6.
So sadly, many contractors believe that the individual who comes up with the lowest price will get awarded the most jobs, and it's definitely an easier way of selling, but eventually it will catch up with them, and sooner or later they'll find themselves broke and out of business, and it's just inevitable. So here are some things to look out for, methods that contractors will use to offer lower prices. And so number one is not accurately accounting for the proper amount of time necessary to complete the job correctly, or taking shortcuts on the job, not thinking it through. Or using number 2, using poor quality materials. That speaks for itself.
Yeah, and how can I, as a homeowner, kind of check into that? As far as the quality of the materials, what kind of things should I be looking out for there?
Well, just ask questions of your contractor. They should have a reputation with their material suppliers, and you should be able to get information from them as far as the specifications and the details on the materials that they plan to use. And you'll be able to tell if they have a long history with it. They'll be very familiar with the materials that they use, and be able to tell you quite a bit about them. And then you can do your own research, of course, and find out on your own.
Good.
But just, it comes back to research.
Good. All right, what was that third one?
Number 3, hiring inexpensive or unskilled labor, or people that not had the proper training. Number 4, doesn't carry the proper insurance or carries no insurance. That's a big cost that a lot of contractors will try to avoid. Number 5, simply underestimating due to lack of thoroughly thinking through the job, missing a big step in the project or such.
And more times than not, that turns into a change order.
Yeah. Yep. And if it's not written down, with the specifications, then they're going to come back to you on that.
You talked about interviewing, your contractor's previous clients, asking them some questions, calling up some references. That's a great question to ask. How did the project go as far as they quoted you this price, and how did that compare to the final price you paid? Were there any change orders?
Sure.
What a great question to ask to dig into that.
Yeah, and did they account for everything at the beginning? Did they properly account for the entire job?
Yeah, sometimes that whole apples to oranges things, right? Where this person remodeler one's proposal may be $500 or $1,000 more expensive than remodeler 2, but it's also more detailed. It's also not going to have any change orders. The price you see is what it's going to be at the end of the job. Those are things we need to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yep.
And what was that last one?
Number 6 is, we just talked about it. Plans on charging more once the job is started by intentionally leaving things
I
out.
stole your thunder on that one, didn't I?
Well, sometimes it's by mistake that they'll leave things out, just not properly thinking it through. And other times there are some contractors out there that will intentionally leave things out with the intention of charging more once the job is started, and they've got you locked in, basically.
Interesting. Okay, so those are... Go ahead.
I just tell people to remember, if a contractor is forced to intentionally or unintentionally work for prices so low that they can't make a profit, then they can't help but deliver products and services that are of very little value to you. So cost of the project should be very low on the homeowners.
priority list.
priorities.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One more area, talking about the fact that there's more to a project's cost than just labor and materials. What we want from all of our contractors, and my wife and I have experienced this too, is service after the sale. Are they still going to be around? When something breaks, when something's not working, when I just have questions. Talk to us about what else is involved in running a professional remodeling firm, just so that we can be a little more educated as homeowners.
Yeah, and it really goes back to what we just spoke about. A legitimate contractor is going to have legitimate expenses to run a professional business. And many people will often think that when the cost seems out of proportion to the actual materials and labor required to complete the job, that the difference is just lining that contractor's pockets. But it couldn't be any further from the truth. So the following is a list of just a few of the things that are legitimate expenses to running a reputable contracting business. So we've got computer expenses, employee benefits and vacations, payroll expenses, all of our tools and equipment, our trucks, our vehicles, our fuel for those vehicles, repair and maintenance for those vehicles, continuing education. A good contractor should continually be learning new methods and new products on the market. And of course, there's advertising, marketing, and sales to continue to bring in new business. And that's just a very small percentage of the costs that go into a reputable remodeling company's overhead expenses.
Good. You highlighted and you stopped there a little bit heavily on the whole continuing education. The National Association of Home Builders and the certifications. Why don't you talk just real quick on one of the certifications I know you have, and then we'll get into this final point that I want to make.
Sure. We just recently completed training for the Certified Graduate Remodeler certification. And so I had to travel around the country to take a lot of different training courses, but it was well worth it, and it really helped me in my professional life as well as in the actual trades itself, in becoming a better businessman and contractor.
Excellent. So we talked about a lot of the things to look out for, etc. Let's kind of flip that around. What we should be looking for in a remodeler, some of the positive things, some of the things that we should be expecting, and that our contractor, our remodeler should have. I know you have kind of developed from talking to your previous clients and from setting up your business. You have something you call a 9-point promise. Why don't you go through not all 9 of them, but maybe a couple that you think are most important?
Well, besides, we talked about the good old-fashioned customer service, and that's, to me, that's just a given. From a remodeler or any business, there should be that customer service. Another big one for us is focus. We like to say that once we're on your job, we're going to stay committed to it all the way through to completion. So a consistent workflow on your projects is something we take really seriously. And so with us on the job, you're never going to look around and say, hey, where'd my contractor go? I'm sure everyone's heard people complain about such things. So we're going to be there from day one till the end, until your job is finished, and not job hopping. Another one we really take pride in is our cleanliness. So your job site and any other part of the home that we're going to encounter or travel through will be clean at the end of the day. All your floors are very well protected. We're never going to leave an impression behind that's unwanted. So, of course, remodeling is a dirty work, but we make every effort possible to keep the dust and debris down to an absolute minimum. So, and then, of course, reliability. And it goes back to the customer service. If we say we're going to be there, we're going to be there on time every time. We're going to return your calls, return your emails in a reasonable amount of time. And we know you have a busy schedule, and so do we, but we're not going to be the ones to disrupt your schedule. We're going to do what we say we're going to do every time.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, lots of great ideas, lots of great tips, lots of things that people should be hopefully taking notes on, and when they're preparing to do a remodeling project, be asking these questions, be digging into this. It's very important, and it's going to ensure a wonderful remodeling experience. So thanks Nate for sharing your expertise and your experience. Great information.
Yeah. Thank you, Kyle. And
You
I'd
bet.
say to everybody out there, just do your research and find the contractor that you feel the most comfortable with.
Thank you for listening. If you have any questions or would like to speak to Nate about a remodeling project you are considering, you can contact him via phone at 402-617-6240, email him at nate@lincolnrenovations.com, or learn more at www.lincolnrenovations.com. Thanks again, and happy remodeling!